October 24, 1972, Ellis Auditorium, Memphis. In front of 4,500 roaring fans. A blind veteran raised a trembling hand to salute Elvis. The king froze. Mid-note, and what he did next left the hall dead silent. Eyes glistening, and thousands unable to breathe through their tears. What happened next changed a performance forever. The air in Ellis Auditorium was thick with anticipation. A mixture of cigarette smoke, popcorn, and the faint tank of damp velvet from the seats. October 24, 1972, felt electric fans pressed forward, their programs rustling nervously in the dim amber glow of stage lights. The first strum of the guitar hummed through the room, vibrating against the polished wooden floor. In the front row, a line of veterans sat with proud, rigid posture, their medals glinting faintly under the lights. One among them, Private Joe Ellis, leaned on a white cane, his fingers trembling as they clutched the handle. He had come to witness a legend, but also to reclaim a sense of belonging. After the war had robbed him of sight and part of his confidence, the camera sweeps across the anxious crowd. Students, families, and longtime Elvis devotees, murmuring in excitement, unaware that something singular was about to occur. Soft whispers ripple through the auditorium as the band tunes quietly backstage, the rustle of papers and distant laughter layering over the anticipation. The hum of chatter dies slightly as the first note pierces the hush. Mid-script, reflective question: have you ever felt the electricity in a room just before something unforgettable happens? Every eye is drawn to the stage, yet the most remarkable action is quietly brewing in the front row. Programs shift, a chair creaks, and suddenly a single hand rises silently, almost imperceptibly. Against the dim glow a salute so subtle that most in the hall do not notice it yet. Mini cliffhanger. That single raised hand, trembling with intent, is about to stop a performance in its tracks. Elvis Presley stepped onto the stage, sequined jacket catching the amber light, boots clicking against the polished wood. The roar of 4,500 fans swelled, a tidal wave of cheers that shook the rafters. The band started the familiar opening riff, but amid the chaos, Elvis's eyes caught something in the front row. Private Joe Ellis, blind but determined, had lifted his hand in a trembling salute. For a heartbeat, time seemed to bend. The crowd didn't immediately notice, their attention still on the stage light and the energy of the king's presence. The air thickened with tension. Security glanced nervously at each other, unsure how to respond. Some whispered, wondering if the veteran needed assistance, while others hesitated, afraid of interrupting a star mid-performance. Elvis's fingers hovered over the guitar strings, the melody suspended. His voice faltered slightly as he sang the next line, and the audience sensed something unusual. Murmurs began to ripple through the auditorium, first subtle, then louder, as people noticed the pause, the frozen figure of Elvis, and the front row salute. What would you do if someone's silent courage interrupted your world? The collective heartbeat of the audience shifted. Breaths were held. The typical applause and cheering were replaced by quiet anticipation. The veteran's effort, small yet resolute, held the power to command attention without a single word. Reporters in the balcony scribbled furiously, sensing a story beyond the performance itself. The spotlight hit Joe Ellis' raised hand, casting a dramatic shadow across the front seats, illuminating the gesture's profound vulnerability. The band, sensing the pause, fell into a tentative hum, the music softer, almost reverent. Every eye in the hall, now drawn to the front row, mirrored the tension between convention and compassion. The atmosphere was fragile, a perfect balance of expectation and awe, waiting to see how the king would respond. Minutes stretched longer than they had any right to, each second magnifying the quiet heroism of a man who had already given everything for his country. Elvis stops playing entirely, his gaze locked on Private Joe Ellis, and the hall goes dead silent, holding its collective breath as the impossible choice hangs in the air. The sudden hush in Ellis's auditorium was almost tangible, pressing against the walls and folding over the audience like a heavy velvet curtain. The band fell completely silent, strings quivering with anticipation, as Elvis's eyes never left Private Joe Ellis in the front row. Security personnel exchanged glances, their rigid training clashing with the human impulse stirring before them. One officer, stagehand Kenny McCall, nearby, hesitated, hand hovering near his radio. No one wanted to act, yet the veteran trembled, fingers tightening around the white cane, uncertainty etched into the lines of his face. The air carried the scent of polished wood and faint smoke, punctuated by the faint metallic temps of metals glinting in the dim light. Elvis leaned slightly forward, fingers frozen above the guitar strings. The hall was dead silent, save for the soft rustle of programs and a distant cough. Each breath felt magnified, each heartbeat echoed like a drum in the cavernous room. The crowd, now fully aware, shifted from curiosity to awe, sensing the gravity of the moment. Reflective question: when has a simple gesture bridged a world of silence? Private Joe Ellis' effort, his quiet courage, had transformed a simple salute into a moment that demanded human recognition. With measured steps, Elvis descended the stage, sequined jacket shimmering under the spotlight, and walked slowly toward the front row. Each footstep seemed to echo through the auditorium, drawing the audience into a shared suspense. He knelt before the veteran, an act both unplanned and profoundly intimate, bringing their eyes to meet. The soft click of the microphone and the hum of the guitar left unfinished framed the moment, giving the silence a resonance more powerful than any note could. The veterans around Ellis sat straighter, inspired by the king's choice to acknowledge one among them personally. Whispers of astonishment traveled through the hall like a wave, a collective intake of breath marking the thin line between performance and compassion. Cameras flashed from the balcony as reporters scribbled notes, struggling to capture a moment that defied simple description. Elvis's face, softened in expression, mirrored something deeper than recognition. It reflected humanity itself. The crowd held its collective breath, the auditorium suspended in awe. Private Joe Ellis reaches out his hand, uncertain, trembling with vulnerability, and Elvis mirrors the salute, a connection formed silently yet unmistakably. Leaving the audience stunned, Elvis nodded once, sharply, as if the decision had been made in a single heartbeat. He lifted Private Joe Ellis' trembling hand, bringing it to his own forehead in a mirrored salute. Dead silence enveloped Ellis Auditorium. For a moment, 4,500 fans seemed frozen, caught between disbelief and reverence. The spotlight glinted off the sequins of Elvis's jacket, reflecting in the veterans' medals, a visual echo of shared respect. Short bursts of movement, the soft shifting of chairs, the slight intake of breath accentuated the stillness, contrasting the thunderous applause that had filled the hall minutes before. Cameras clicked feverishly, capturing a moment impossible to reproduce, while reporters' pens raced across pages, trying to anchor an ephemeral act into words. A reporter, Susan Haynes, scribbled in near silence. Noting the shift in atmosphere, the arena had become less about spectacle and more about human connection. Soft strings from the band swelled subtly, underscoring the emotion rather than the rhythm. Every note a gentle accent to the silent dialogue unfolding center stage. What does it mean to truly honor someone in front of thousands? Elvis's eyes, wide and sincere, met those of Joe Ellis, and for that instant, performance and celebrity dissolved into a shared, sacred space. The audience, initially passive, began to sense the depth of this choice. Fathers clasped children to their sides. Veterans straightened. Strangers exchanged glances. And the energy shifted from awe to a communal sense of empathy. In that instant, the room wasn't just watching Elvis, it was witnessing humanity itself. The applause started tentatively, soft claps at first, then surging into a wave that rolled through the auditorium. Tears glistened on faces, some wiped away hastily, others left to fall freely. The king's choice had elevated a fleeting gesture into a narrative of compassion, one that would ripple far beyond the stage lights and velvet curtains. Private Joe Ellis whispers something inaudible, and Elvis smiles knowingly, a shared secret suspended between two worlds, leaving the audience breathless and on the edge of emotion. The tentative applause grew, swelling into a unified roar as the audience fully realized what had just occurred. The energy in Ellis's auditorium shifted. It was no longer a performance of one man on stage, but a collective witness to an extraordinary act of empathy. Nearby veterans rose to their feet, a ripple of respect moving across the front rows. Strangers reached for one another's hands, bridging aisles, creating spontaneous connections born of shared awe. The air was thick with emotion, the faint scent of roses from a young girl who had brought one forward, mingled with popcorn and old wood, the ambient background now charged with reverence. Elvis returned to the stage, seamlessly resuming the song, but the salute remained woven into the performance. Every chorus echoed the earlier gesture, a visual thread connecting the stage to the crowd. Tonight, music became a language everyone could understand. Fans lifted homemade flags and waved them slowly. Children clutched programs to their chests, and the veteran's raised hand now felt like a symbol for everyone present. Reflective question. Have you ever experienced a moment where one act of kindness inspired a room full of strangers to respond in kind? Stagehand Kenny McCall watched from the wings, smiling quietly, noticing subtle interactions, a young couple exchanging teary glances, an elderly man nodding with approval, and children learning, in real time, the power of empathy. Every cheer now carried a dual-purpose celebration of the music and acknowledgement of the human spirit. The auditorium seemed to pulse, breaths sinking to the rhythm of compassion rather than rhythm of the song. A fan at the back of the hall yelled, "Elvis, you changed everything," and the declaration echoed through the venue, reverberating as both recognition and challenge. What would every attendee do with this moment in their own lives? Years later, a small bronze plaque would be installed at Ellis Auditorium, commemorating the salute that had captured hearts on that October night. The words etched onto its surface, in honor of courage, compassion, and the power of recognition, served as a permanent reminder of what had transpired. Bootleg recordings circulated among collectors, preserving not just Elvis' performance, but the hushed awe and eventual eruption of the crowd. Newspaper clippings from the Memphis Gazette and the Evening Times bore headlines like "Blind Veteran," "King's Gesture, Memphis Changed Forever," chronicling a night that transcended the ordinary boundaries of concert, law. Interviews with attendees decades later relayed the profound emotional impact. Stagehand Kenny McCall recounted how the arena had gone dead silent, how he felt the collective heartbeat of thousands of people pause, and how a single act of empathy had cascaded into something transformative. Reporter Susan Haynes recalled the challenge of capturing in words a moment that had unfolded in silence, yet roared through the consciousness of everyone present. Which acts of kindness in your life have echoed beyond the moment? Artifacts from the night: the white cane of Private Joe Ellis, the rose passed forward by a young fan, and a worn program bearing the date were displayed in private collections, reminders of a fleeting yet indelible human connection. The stage itself, often photographed in subsequent decades, retained the subtle marks of the event: a scuffed floorboard where Elvis knelt, a faint outline of a handprint, echoes of ovation still resonating in memory. Fans continue to share stories in forums, letters, and reunions, recounting how that single moment of mutual recognition had transformed a concert into a lasting lesson of compassion. That night became a benchmark for celebrity empathy, whispered in fan circles and carried in memory for generations. An enduring testament to how one simple gesture can ripple outward, shaping lives long after the music has faded. The story of Elvis and Private Joe Ellis is remembered not solely for the music or the spectacle, but for a quiet choice that transformed thousands of hearts in an instant. The King's talent, while legendary, became secondary to his empathy, the ability to pause, to see, and to honor another human being amidst the roar of adoration. The auditorium, once filled with cheering fans, now exists in memory as a sacred space, where the collective pulse of 4,500 people beat in unison with compassion rather than performance. Reflective question: how can one small gesture change thousands of lives at once? The echo of that salute persists, a reminder that fame is fleeting, but human connection endures. Even decades later, visitors to Ellis's auditorium recount the night in hushed tones, tracing the plaque and imagining the raised hand of Private Joe Ellis, the King kneeling before him, and the silent, transformative energy that rippled through the crowd. Each retelling reinforces a simple truth: moments of empathy are timeless, capable of crossing generations and leaving a permanent imprint on the world. In memory, the auditorium is silent yet alive. The cheers and tears replayed in hearts rather than sound. The King, the veteran, and the audience are united in a moment that proves a true legend is measured not only in applause, but in the courage to honor another. That night's memory endures as a quiet, powerful testament: humanity over fame, empathy over performance, leaving an indelible mark on everyone who witnessed it. Moments like these remind us that true legend isn't measured by talent alone. It's found in the courage to honor others. Share this story with someone who believes in the power of empathy, or reflect on the last time a small gesture changed the course of your day. Let this memory inspire your own acts of humanity.